The flames had come out of nowhere. One minute, Taylor was going through her private studio, arranging the final touches on tracks no one had ever heard. The next, a smoke alarm screamed through the house, and the smell of burning wood and electronics filled the air. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she saw the fire spreading across the ceiling. She ran to the door, her boots hitting the polished floor in a frantic rhythm. By the time the fire department arrived, the house was a chaotic blur of sirens, hoses, and smoke. Taylor stood outside, drenched in sweat and ash, staring at the blackened ruins of what had been her creative sanctuary. Every instrument, every notebook, every recording, gone. All her unreleased songs, years of work, memories of her private moments, they had vanished in minutes. The media didn't know yet. The fire was still being investigated, and no one could explain how it had started. Taylor didn't care about the speculation. She was numb. For months, she had poured herself into music that no one would ever hear. Music that had been personal, experimental, daring, and now it was gone. Her assistant approached, hesitant. "Taylor, I'm so sorry. Is there anything we can?" Taylor shook her head. "No, there's nothing anyone can do." She felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger at the fire, at the loss, at the randomness of life. Relief that she no longer had the pressure of perfection, the looming expectation of what would come next. The work was gone, and with it, the obsession. In the following days, Taylor refused interviews. Her social media went dark. Fans noticed immediately. Rumors spread like wildfire. Taylor Swift loses years of music in fire. Is the pop queen's career in jeopardy? Exclusive. How will Taylor recover from this devastating loss? But behind closed doors, Taylor made a decision. This wasn't the end. It was a reset. She walked into the ruins of her studio one last time, looking at the melted guitar strings, the charred keyboards, the scorched pages of lyrics. She whispered to herself, "I'll create again. But this time, I'll do it differently." The first days after the fire were quiet. She spent time alone, reflecting on her journey, revisiting old notebooks that had survived in hidden drawers, and finding inspiration in memories rather than in recordings. She realized that she had relied too much on perfection, too much on controlling every note and every beat. The fire had stripped that away. Then came the calls. Producers, collaborators, friends, they all wanted to know what her next move would be. Every voice reminded her of the expectations she had carried for years. But she refused. Instead, Taylor found solace in a small, private space at her family home, an old attic she used as a sanctuary years ago. She dusted off a piano, picked up a notebook, and started writing again. Not for charts, not for fame, not for anyone else, just for herself. The first song she wrote after the fire was hesitant, fragile, almost as if her fingers were remembering the feeling of creation after a long absence. But as she played the chords, something stirred deep inside her, a spark that had not been extinguished. Maybe the fire hadn't destroyed her. Maybe it had freed her. Even her friends noticed a change. Instead of the usual perfectionist Taylor, the one who would endlessly tweak verses, she was looser, freer, more raw. She sang melodies that had never been polished, embraced lyrics that were imperfect but honest. It was as if losing everything allowed her to find something even more precious, herself. But not everyone understood. The public demanded answers. Fans wanted a comeback, executives wanted reassurance, and reporters wanted headlines. Yet Taylor remained silent, retreating into her work without promise or timetable. It was her rebellion against the pressure, a quiet declaration that she would define her own path this time. Late at night, she often returned to the spot where her old recordings had burned. She would stare at the ashes and smile faintly, imagining the songs rising from the smoke like phantoms. In her mind, the melodies were still alive. They were hers, beyond the reach of fire, beyond the reach of fame. And slowly, Taylor began to dream again. Weeks passed, and Taylor's world had shrunk to the quiet confines of her family attic. She avoided news, social media, and even phone calls that might remind her of the outside chaos. Her once thriving studio was gone, her unreleased tracks lost forever, but the music in her mind refused to die. Each night, she played the piano, letting her fingers wander over chords that hadn't existed on paper before. It wasn't easy. Doubts crept in like unwelcome ghosts. What if I'll never create anything this powerful again, she thought, staring at the ceiling. What if the fire took more than recordings? What if it burned away my talent? But each morning, she returned to the piano, as if proving to herself that creativity was not housed in instruments or hard drives. It was inside her. Her small circle of friends became witnesses to her transformation. Abigail, a childhood friend, brought her coffee and encouragement every morning. "You don't need a studio, Taylor," she said softly. "The music is in you, not in the room." Taylor nodded, grateful but restless. She knew the truth of it, yet the fear lingered. The world would judge, as always. Then came the first public stir. A blurry photo of her walking near a local park appeared online. Fans speculated, news outlets claimed sightings, and rumors of her secret recovery went viral. Taylor ignored it all. She refused to perform, refused interviews, refused even to hint at a return. She wanted the music to grow organically, like a fire starting and kindling, not roaring from someone else's expectations. One evening, while experimenting with new sounds, she struck upon something extraordinary. Using a small portable recorder, she layered her voice over simple piano chords, then added natural sounds from her surroundings, the wind brushing through the trees, the soft patter of rain against the roof, even the distant call of a bird. The track wasn't polished. It was vulnerable, fragile, raw. And yet, when she listened back, she felt a surge of joy she hadn't known in months. This was her rebirth. She realized she didn't need perfection, fame, or an audience to validate her work. The fire had destroyed her old creations, yes, but it had cleared the space for authenticity. She began to write more freely, experimenting with sounds, voices, and emotions she had never dared to use. Each new song carried pieces of her pain, hope, and resilience. Even as she rebuilt her music, the outside world continued to pull at her. Executives called repeatedly, urging her to release something, anything. Fans pleaded online, sending messages of love and concern. And though Taylor felt a pang of longing to respond, she stayed silent. The only audience she cared about now was herself. One night, she received a letter, not from a fan, but from an old collaborator, Jack, who had worked with her on past albums. He wrote, "Taylor, I don't know what you're planning, but I believe in your music. Fire may have taken the tracks, but it cannot take your soul. Whatever comes next, I'll be here to listen." Taylor held the note in her hands and felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She was not alone, even if she was choosing solitude for her own healing. She realized that this period of isolation was not punishment, nor was it exile. It was preparation, a chance to reclaim her voice on her terms. As December approached, she had written more songs than she could have imagined. They were intimate, haunting, and deeply personal. She began recording on a small device, layering piano, guitar, and ambient sounds she collected from nature. Each track was a story, a diary entry, a confession set to melody. And though she knew the world might never hear them, it didn't matter. For the first time in her career, Taylor created without expectation. By the time the first snow fell, she had a complete collection of songs. She listened to them in silence, tears streaming down her face. These songs were born from loss, from fire, from destruction, and yet they were alive. They were more alive than anything she had recorded before. The fire had taken everything, and in doing so, it had given her the one thing she had always craved: freedom. By the start of the new year, Taylor had fully immersed herself in her private creative world. The fire, which had once seemed like a catastrophic end, had become the catalyst for something deeper. Each morning she woke. She greeted her piano like an old friend, fingers running over keys that now carried the weight of memory, loss, and renewal. The melodies she created were softer, more introspective, yet they carried a haunting power. Despite her isolation, the world continued to whisper around her. Rumors of her secret music project swirled online. Fans speculated wildly. Social media erupted with theories, and every news outlet seemed determined to uncover her next move. Taylor ignored it all. She wasn't interested in headlines or streaming numbers. She was interested in truth. One evening, while experimenting with ambient sounds, she recorded a track that startled even her. She had captured the sound of snowflakes hitting the roof, the faint hum of a distant train, and the quiet creak of the old attic floorboards. Layered over her delicate piano chords, the result was hauntingly beautiful, a song that felt alive, almost breathing. Listening back, she realized that the imperfections were exactly what made it extraordinary. Her creative process became a daily ritual. She would wake before dawn, brew coffee, and spend hours in the attic, letting ideas flow without judgment. She wrote lyrics inspired by the fire, by loss, by her own vulnerability. Some nights, she cried as she played, some nights she laughed. The music became a mirror of her soul. Occasionally, she allowed a close friend into her world. Abigail, always steady and encouraging, marveled at the new Taylor emerging from the ashes of her studio. "You're writing differently now," Abigail noted one afternoon. "It's not about perfection. It's about honesty. It's you." Taylor nodded, smiling faintly. She had come to realize that the fire had done more than destroy her work. It had stripped away expectation, pressure, and the fear of failure. She was free to create without compromise, without an audience watching her every move. This freedom was intoxicating. But even in isolation, she couldn't escape the pull of the industry entirely. Producers called, offering deals and pleading for tracks to release, while fans clamored online for even a hint of new music. Taylor considered it all, then gently pushed it aside. She would release nothing until it felt right, until the music reflected her truth. Late one night, a new challenge appeared. Her old hard drives, previously stored safely off-site, were found to be corrupted beyond repair. Once again, the threat of complete loss loomed over her. Yet, instead of despair, Taylor felt a strange clarity. She had been relying too long on technology and backups. Now she had to trust herself entirely. She could no longer rely on the past. The music had to come from within, not from anything she had saved. With renewed determination, she began recording more complex pieces, using the attic's natural acoustics and simple digital tools. Each song told a story of loss, of hope, of reinvention. And as she layered track after track, she discovered something incredible. She had discovered a sound that was uniquely hers, unfiltered and unrepeatable. Then, one quiet morning, she received a simple message. A fan had somehow recorded an early demo she had shared privately years ago. The song, though incomplete, had resurfaced online and was gaining traction. While many would have panicked, Taylor simply smiled. This was not a leak. It was a reminder that music, once created, had a life of its own. It could travel, survive, and touch hearts, even without perfection. Taylor realized something crucial. She no longer needed to chase validation or acclaim. Music could exist as a pure form of expression, and if it reached others along the way, that was a gift, not a goal. She decided that when she was ready, she would release her new collection, not to meet expectation, but to share her journey honestly, from the ashes to the present. The fire had taken nearly everything she owned, but it could not take her voice, her creativity, or her resilience. Taylor Swift, reborn from destruction, now understood what it truly meant to be an artist, to create, to feel, and to let the music live, regardless of the world's gaze. The months rolled on, and Taylor's attic studio had transformed into a sanctuary of rebirth. Each song she recorded carried the echo of fire, the whisper of ashes, and the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. Fans continued to speculate online, but she ignored them. Her music was no longer a product to be marketed. It was a declaration of survival, of self-discovery, of art reclaimed from destruction. One evening, as she played a haunting melody on the piano, Abigail sat beside her, sipping tea in the dim light. "Taylor," she said softly, "these songs, they're incredible. You've created something I've never heard before, something only you could make." Taylor smiled, her eyes glistening. "I finally get it. I don't need the world to approve. I don't need awards or charts. I just need to create what's real." With that realization, she made a choice. She would release the collection, but not in the traditional way. No grand album launch, no flashy music videos, no media blitz. Instead, she recorded a single acoustic session in her attic and uploaded it quietly online, sharing it directly with her fans. The response was immediate. Messages poured in, thanking her for honesty, for vulnerability, for giving a voice to emotions everyone felt but few could express. The songs were imperfect, raw, and beautiful. Each one told a story of loss, fear, hope, and redemption. Listeners felt as if Taylor was speaking directly to them, whispering secrets in the dark, offering solace through melodies that were born of fire and rebirth. As weeks passed, the collection grew in popularity, not because of hype or marketing, but because it resonated. Critics called it revolutionary. Fans described it as healing. Taylor didn't read the headlines. She simply sat at her piano, writing the next song, letting her creativity flow freely, unbound by expectations. One chilly evening, she played a new composition, her voice soft but steady. The lyrics spoke of resilience, of rising from devastation, and of finding strength in vulnerability. As she sang, the memories of the fire, once a symbol of loss, felt transformed into a source of power. It had taken everything she had controlled, but it had given her something far more valuable: artistic freedom and inner clarity. Her team eventually approached her, hesitant. "Taylor, the world is asking for a tour, for interviews, for a big comeback," they said. She shook her head gently. "I'm not coming back on anyone else's terms. I'll perform if I want, release music if it feels right, but it will be on my terms. I won't let the fire's lesson go to waste." And so, Taylor continued creating in quiet, intimate spaces. She held small, secret performances for devoted fans, sometimes in a friend's living room or a local theater, letting the music speak louder than her fame ever could. Each performance was deeply personal, almost spiritual, as if the songs themselves carried the souls of everyone who had experienced loss and found hope. By the end of the year, Taylor reflected on her journey. She had lost nearly everything in a fire, yet she had gained so much more: a connection to her own voice, to the truth in her music, and to the fans who loved her not for spectacle, but for honesty. She understood that creativity was not about perfection or control. It was about courage, authenticity, and the willingness to rise from destruction stronger than before. One night, as she looked out the window at the city lights, she whispered to herself, "The fire didn't destroy me. It freed me, and I will never forget that." Her music, born of ashes, had found life again, and Taylor Swift, renewed and unstoppable, had discovered the ultimate truth: that art, like the human spirit, could endure anything and emerge more beautiful on the other side.